The midday sun beat down on the base, casting long shadows over the concrete courtyard. Inside the mess hall, the air buzzed with lunchtime chatter, trays clattered, boots stomped, and laughter echoed between steel-gray walls. Soldiers in uniform gathered in groups, swapping stories and ribbing one another between bites of chow. That's when she walked in. She wasn't in uniform. No insignia, no stripes, no nameplate. Just a plain gray t-shirt, worn jeans, and boots that had seen more years than most of the recruits in the room. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose braid. She moved quietly, blending into the background, or trying to. But something about her made heads turn. On her right wrist, a faded tattoo peeked out from under her sleeve. It was small, just a few cryptic lines and symbols, nothing flashy. But sharp-eyed soldiers noticed it. At one table near the back, a group of young recruits snickered. "Check out the tattoo," one muttered, nudging his buddy. "Looks like she got it at a truck stop," another joked. "Probably tells people she was a Navy SEAL or something." Laughter rippled through the group. One mimicked a dramatic voice, "I'm a secret agent, I swear. Got this after I single-handedly took out a terrorist cell." More laughter. The woman didn't respond. She said nothing, didn't even flinch. She just picked up her tray, quietly poured herself a cup of black coffee, grabbed a banana, and made her way to an empty corner table. Her eyes drifted toward the TV mounted on the wall, which was playing a news segment, something about a special forces rescue in a hostile region. She sipped her coffee slowly, methodically. There was something in the way she held herself, not arrogance, not fear, just stillness. Like someone who had learned how to stay invisible in places where visibility meant death. But the recruits weren't done. "Bet she tells bar stories about being deep undercover," one said. "Probably has a made-up name like Raven or Shadow Wolf." They held with laughter. Then the door opened. Colonel James Redford stepped inside. The room instinctively straightened. Conversations hushed. He was a man whose presence demanded attention, tall, decorated, known for his no-nonsense demeanor and steely stare. He paused mid-step. His eyes locked on her. For a long second, he didn't move. The chatter faded to silence. Then, without a word, the colonel walked past the line, past the recruits, straight toward the corner table where the woman sat. The recruits watched with smug grins, until the colonel stopped at her table, knelt down slightly, and whispered something that made her finally look up. And then everything changed. The mess hall held its collective breath. Colonel Redford, the most revered man on base, was bent slightly at the waist, his voice so low it was nearly inaudible. But what he said next, those close enough to hear, would never forget. "Stand down. That's her." The woman looked up slowly, her eyes sharp and steady, not surprised, not fearful, just alert. Her fingers were still loosely curled around her coffee cup. Her posture didn't change. But the room did. A private, seated just a few feet away, blinked. "What did he say?" Another whispered, "What do you mean that's her? Who is she?" Colonel Redford straightened, and for the first time in years, his voice cracked with something that sounded dangerously close to awe. He turned to the stunned soldiers and said, "That mark on her wrist? That's not some barroom souvenir. That's the insignia of Wild Haven, a covert unit so deep in Black Ops it was burned from every record. A unit we don't talk about. Because we're not supposed to know it existed." Now the silence in the room felt heavier. Respectful. Even the kitchen staff paused mid-motion. The colonel continued, his voice louder now, for all to hear. 15 years ago, we lost a team in the Korangal Valley. Communications were down. Extraction was impossible. We had written them off. Then this woman, this ghost, hiked in under enemy fire, alone, and pulled 3 of my men out of a collapsed compound with nothing but a sidearm, a trauma kit, and her bare hands. Gasps echoed. Some jaws dropped. The mocking laughter from before had long since vanished. She didn't wait for backup. She didn't ask for help. She went in because they were her brothers. And when they came back alive, Command told her she'd earned any medal she wanted. The woman finally spoke, her voice low and calm. I told them I wanted a transfer. Out. The colonel nodded. She never collected those medals. Disappeared from the military grid completely. I never saw her again, until today. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each of the recruits who had left. You will not joke about her, Inc. You will not speak her name. You will not ask questions. What you will do, is remember that real warriors don't need stories. They carry scars. The woman stood, quietly. She gave the colonel a respectful nod. Then she turned and walked out of the mess hall. No one moved. No one spoke. It wasn't fear that gripped them. It was respect, the kind that comes only when you realize you've been in the presence of someone who changed the world and asked for nothing in return. The door swung shut behind her with a soft click. And just like that, she was gone. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting a warm, amber glow across the quiet base. Most of the mess hall had cleared out. Conversations buzzed in hushed tones now, not of gossip or games, but about her. The woman with the ink. The ghost from a forgotten war. Private Ethan Morales, the young medic who'd laughed the loudest earlier, sat alone on a bench outside the barracks. His tray of uneaten food rested beside him, forgotten. He couldn't shake her face. The stillness in her eyes. The quiet authority. And the colonel's words, that's her. Then he saw her. She sat beneath a battered flagpole near the edge of the base, sipping another cup of coffee. Alone again. No uniform. No guard. Just a woman and the wind. Ethan stood, hesitated, then walked toward her. His boots crunched on the gravel as he approached. Ma'am, he said softly, stopping a few steps away. She didn't look up. He scratched the back of his neck. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For earlier. We were ignorant. Still silent, she took another sip. I didn't know who you were, he added. She finally looked at him. Her expression was unreadable, not cold, but distant. Worn. Like someone who had seen too much, and carried more than anyone should. You still don't, she said gently. He nodded. You're right. After a long pause, she patted the bench beside her. Ethan sat carefully. I was 22, she said after a moment. My unit didn't come back. They were buried under concrete, twisted metal, and silence. I went in when I shouldn't have. Got lucky. Got them out. But not all of them. She rolled up her sleeve slightly, revealing the tattoo in full. It was simple, rough, clearly hand-inked. 5 thin lines intersected by one vertical mark. Beneath it, smaller initials in faded lettering. Each line is one of my teammates. The vertical one is me, the last one standing. Ethan stared at it, swallowing hard. No medals, she whispered. No parades. Just that. He didn't know what to say. The usual words, thank you, I'm sorry, you're a hero, felt empty. They gave me a discharge and silence. I took both. She looked out toward the horizon. I just wanted peace. But some things follow you. He was quiet, watching her. Why come back now? She gave a faint smile. To remind you kids that being loud doesn't make you brave. And that real courage isn't about showing up with weapons, it's about showing up when everyone else has walked away. Ethan looked down, ashamed. Then, slowly, he removed his cap and placed it over his heart. I won't forget you. She nodded once. Good. And with that, they sat together in the fading light, a young soldier and a silent legend, separated by years but united by understanding. A few days passed, but the woman's presence lingered like the fading echo of a song. She hadn't returned to the mess hall, hadn't spoken to anyone else. Yet something had changed. The base felt different. Conversations were quieter, more thoughtful. Recruits stood a little taller. Some began to train harder, not to impress, but to honor something unseen. Private Ethan Morales, the young medic, was among them. He had started carrying himself differently, not with bravado, but with purpose. And then one morning, he made a quiet decision. He sat at his bunk, sketching carefully onto a piece of cloth. A minimalist version of her tattoo, 5 lines intersected by 1. At the bottom, instead of initials, he wrote, in silence, strength. He stitched the design onto the inside of his field medic pouch, where no one could see it, but where he would always carry it. That week, he volunteered for a humanitarian mission in a nearby village. An outbreak of illness had swept through, and while the assignment wasn't glamorous, it was needed. As he worked, treating children, distributing medicine, and bandaging wounded hands, the local villagers began noticing the small patch whenever he opened his kit. An older man asked through a translator, "What does that symbol mean?" Ethan smiled softly. "It stands for someone who risked everything to save others, and asked for nothing in return." Back at the base, word spread of his quiet service. Other recruits followed suit. They didn't copy the tattoo, they copied the spirit. One offered his rations to a new soldier who missed the mess hall. Another carried a wounded dog off the road. Small things. Silent things. The culture was shifting, not by orders, but by example. Eventually, someone painted a mural on the wall just outside the barracks. No fanfare, no dedication ceremony. Just a stark black silhouette of the tattoo, brush-stroked across gray cement. Beneath it, 3 words. The quiet remain. Colonel Redford stood before it one evening, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't say anything for a long while. Then a voice spoke from the shadows. "I told you I didn't want attention." He smiled without turning around. "It's not attention," he said. "It's memory." She stepped forward, now dressed in faded fatigues. Not official. Just enough to blend in again. He looked at her. They needed someone to remind them what real service looks like. "You did that, without firing a shot." She didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, "I'm not staying." "I know." He extended his hand. She shook it, firm and steady. As she walked away, past the mural and toward the gate, Ethan spotted her from a distance. He saluted. She didn't return it. But she gave a small nod, the kind of gesture that carried more weight than a medal. And then she was gone, once again. But this time, her silence had left a voice behind.